So today I wanted to share with you guys the 7 most impactful design decisions that I've made in this home that have really changed how each room looks, feels, and functions. If you're new here, my name is LK, and if you're not new here, then you probably know I just posted my kitchen makeover. I absolutely love the space so much, and thank you guys all for the really kind words on it. I really just enjoy living in that space now. If you haven't seen it yet, then you should definitely go check it out after this, but now that the kitchen feels really cohesive with the rest of the home, I thought it would be a great time to do a little retrospective. I've been in this rental for just a little over 2 years now, and while I've made a lot of changes with some renter-friendly hacks, DIYs, and thrifted items, the transformation that's happened here has really come from all of the design decisions, like the ones that were solving my everyday problems and serving my bigger vision, and also making the home feel really cohesive. These aren't really hacks in the traditional sense, but they're more so systems and mindsets that I had put in place that I didn't really get a chance to dive deep into during my makeover videos. So think of this as the extended version of all of those projects, while also giving you guys some tips on how you can maybe apply it in your own home. So let's get into it. So if your home feels really specific, like it's a white box with gray floors, or there's some weird focal point that you can't really change because you're renting or you're living on a budget, you can't always paint all the walls or rip out the floors, but you can choose a color palette intentionally and remix it throughout the home. But I wouldn't pick one at random. I think it's smart to pick a color palette that highlights what you do like and downplays what you don't like, just to bring a sense of flow to the whole home. When I moved in, I couldn't help but notice that the floors were this really yellowy orange oak, and a lot of the furniture leaned that way as well. So the first thing I knew I needed to do was to just bring a sense of balance into the living spaces. And then another feature of the home that I really liked was all of the big windows. They let in tons of light, which really highlighted all the warmth. And you can see just about everything outside, which is a lot of terracotta, green plants, black metal, brown wood, white and cream plaster or stucco, and of course the really blue sky, which is pretty prominent here. So I decided that would become my entire color palette for the home. I started by cooling off some of that warmth with some greens and blues in the rug and the pillows. But I didn't want to completely eliminate all of the warm tones altogether, so I leaned into them by choosing accents that echoed the floor but also had a little bit more depth. So I carried that through by painting the Art Deco design around the fireplace with a really deep red that was similar to the hearth tile and the terracotta outside. That red isn't really seen in any other dominant focal points in the room, but it shares the warmth of the woods that have kind of a reddish-orange undertone, and it really complements the floors, which I think really ties everything together without making it too matchy-matchy. So now I'm working with a palette of somewhere between yellow and orange and darker reds and then cooler blues and greens. So I took those colors and scattered them throughout the house at different strengths and tones and hues. The greens show up in the pillows, rugs, tile, even the greenish yellow paint on the kitchen and nook trim. You can find blue in different tones through tile, art, furniture, and textiles in just about every room, as it's one of my main cooling colors. The entire spectrum of red shows up in this house at different points when it feels right. I've got darker, muddier reds in the dining room and living room, on rugs and chairs, and the plant pot in the breakfast nook, the curtain in the guest bathroom, and even the pink tile in the primary bathroom is just a very light shade of red. The yellow or yellowy orange is used sparingly though because the floors are so dominant. However, in this room specifically, I really brought that color up the wall with the bookcase behind me just to give this wall some visual interest the moment you walk in. I also sprinkled it in with the plant pot, candles, books, the trim in the kitchen areas, brassy or gold accents, decor, and frames. Also, the office Roman shades and work table have a yellow undertone, and I even brought in a teak color in a really minimal way in the primary bathroom on the medicine cabinet. So even though every room is kind of different in a sense, the palette is always there. I'm always like adjusting an imaginary dial of hue, saturation, or tone depending on the mood or purpose of a space. I specifically chose more blues, blacks, and dark browns in the office because I think it just feels a little bit more serious or professional or office-like, but it still has hints of green and red or orange and yellow, even if it comes through in the lighting or the floors. I think the bedroom is calmer with softer greens and darker woods and little pops of red and blue. And the guest bathroom has powder blue tile, a red shower head, and it really all just works because I'm working with primary colors and it's all the same color palette. It's just remixed in a different way. If you're dealing with a very cold white room with gray floors, this idea still applies. Instead of fighting those tones, you can really lean into them and then bring your own level of interest. So maybe you add in some blue gray or charcoal or like a concrete shade, and you can repeat those colors or shades in a few small different ways, like through knobs or picture frames or textiles or furniture legs. And instead of going through color, you can also use metals like stainless steel or chrome. Then to balance in some of those cooler tones, you can add in the warmth. So colors really do live on a spectrum. You can find warmer blues versus cooler blues, or you could also go the warmer wood route and bring in some teak or oak accents. And then you've got your metals like brass or copper. And then you've also got colors like rust or terracotta. I think green also works great in so many spaces because it's such a flexible neutral. I think it really meets cooler colors and warmer colors like right in the middle. So find somewhere where you can play with a color wheel. There's so many different varieties depending on what the mixture is. It's not about finding the perfect color, and it's also not about repeating the same two colors over and over again. It's really about building a personal spectrum of color for your own specific space. So of course, when you move into a new place, whether it's a rental or something that you just purchased, you're either inheriting someone else's bad taste or just years of people making decisions throughout the home and nothing being really intentionally chosen. And so I think our first instinct is to create some kind of uniformity by swapping everything out and making it all look the same. But in this house, I really tried to take a different approach to that and really leaned into the mixed finishes, or what I'm just calling mixed metals. These little finishes here and there, whether they come through decor or doorknobs or light switch covers, are not really meant to be focal points anyways. They're just kind of accents. And I think by intentionally mixing these finishes in every space, but maybe keeping them all in the same era or in the same tone, is the best way to go about it. So for example, in the kitchen, the copper hardware ties into the copper range hood and a few other small copper accents that I added. But I also have a lot of stainless steel and black metal that shows up through the oven/stove or the cart to the right of it. It's in appliances like my espresso machine and toaster. I also feel like I have some stainless steel just from the knives that are sitting on the wall, and then the black metal faucet, as well as the brackets that hold up the shelving. So at first thought, it sounds like nothing really matches, but at the end of the day, these are just neutrals when it comes to color. And the fact that they're repeated so many times, I think is what gives that sense of cohesion and even intentionality. The primary bathroom, for example, has a brass pendant, but then there's polished nickel fixtures. I also added a black metal lamp and a stainless steel outlet cover, but all of these metal accents are relevant to the era of the home. And they're also, again, being repeated throughout the rest of the home, and they're also neutral in color, so it's really not a big deal. I also think all of the mixed metals work in the home because I've associated them with different like eras or styles. So copper shows up in rooms that feel a little bit more vintage or antique. Chrome and stainless steel are definitely leaning a bit more modern and mid-century, and black kind of reminds me of a modern farmhouse like Joanna Gaines vibes, or even something like more industrial, but depending on how it's used, it can lead more like iron, like Spanish Revival vibes. I think when you start to look at metals like that by tone and style, you can start to use them a little bit more intentionally to support the story that you're trying to tell. It also has given me so much more freedom when it comes to secondhand shopping because I don't really feel boxed in by one finish or one era, which means that I can really shop to prioritize silhouette or scale or tone or color or whatever it is. So pick a few finishes that you think might work in your home, get rid of the rest, and then just double down on that. Okay, so one of the more impactful design decisions that I made in this house was to really just embrace the style of the home itself. You do not have to do this at all, but I really want to explain why I think it was impactful. So if you've been watching this channel for a while now, then you know that the architecture in the home is not hugely prominent. I don't have giant beams on my ceiling, but I do have a lot of really noticeable architectural details. There are textured plaster walls, dark wood trim, arched doorways, and when we moved in, the windows still had their original muntins and textured glass. There's a nice tiled hearth, a big statement fireplace, and I think all of these things define the space in a really dominant way. So because I can't change a lot of these architectural details because this isn't my house, instead of doing that and trying to ignore the really dominant or prominent style of this home, I decided to just lean into it. In the dining room, I really wanted to highlight the Spanish Revival vibes, so I tried to bring in some items that spoke to that era, like carved wood details in the buffet and the chairs and the mirror over the buffet, and the chandelier also has carved wood, and it also mixes metal and textured glass as well. There's some stained glass that I put on the kitchen door and the windows. It's faux, but I think it kind of speaks to that style. And I also included some more ornate picture frames that I think would be kind of in that era as well. I think I only have like 2 pieces of art in those frames that are actually from the revival era. I think it's this one photo from like the 1930s that I found at an estate sale or thrift store, I don't remember. And then this other one that I downloaded from an online museum open source website. And this was a piece of carved wood from the Spanish revival era. So I didn't go overboard, but I did try to like, connect with the space a bit. And I really do think it made a huge impact on the room. In the living room, I tried to echo those looks with a bobbin leg side table, black iron candle holders, and even just simple black iron curtain rods. And while most of my furniture and decor spans all different styles and eras, I think these little cues and nods to the architecture really tie it all together. So the architecture sets the tone, but the decor just kind of supports it. So you don't have to design your home strictly to the style of it, but when you have a really prominent theme, designing something within that theme will make the home feel just really harmonious. But if you don't have any real character at all to start with, then you completely have a blank slate to do whatever you'd like. Either way, if you just repeat what is prominent in a big or small way, each room will really start to flow to the next, and the whole home will just feel a little bit more connected and timeless. Okay, so I know that we just talked about embracing the style of the home is important, but my 4th design decision that has been really impactful in this home is the complete opposite. Now we are going to expand on the style of the home, and that's because 2 things can exist at the same time. But this is where things can get really complicated, and it takes a lot of finesse to figure out the right balance, and it's something that I'm still trying to figure out. I think if I just lived in a 1929 Spanish Revival home and only had Spanish Revival type antiques, at some point I think I'd feel like I was living in an antique store, But by mixing in pieces that really speak to each other in different ways, even if they're from totally different eras, it's A, more budget friendly and gives you more options for purchasing. B, it really creates a variety of texture and tone and style. And then C, I think it just gives the home a really unique and personal style, something that only you can create. But the big question is like, how do you choose what to mix and match when you like a bunch of things and you're on a budget and you're secondhand shopping and you want to connect to the architecture of the home, or you want to create a theme and a vibe? One really helpful and non-committal way to experiment with mixing styles is to have a virtual mood board for the home itself, not just one room. I find it really helpful to keep all of my house projects organized in one space, and honestly, Milano is like the best tool for that, hands down. So thank you so much to Milano for sponsoring today's video. I've literally been using Milano for years. You can go back to my first YouTube video ever and see that I was showing you my Milano board on how to plan my Thanksgiving table. It's such an awesome and visual project management tool that allows you to stay flexible and be organized, especially when you're doing really big creative projects like decorating an entire home for the first time or trying to make your entire home feel cohesive. Milano is really my main hub for all of my ideas, inspiration, and decisions. And I know normally I show you guys one Milano board for just the room that I'm working on, but zooming out a bit and thinking about all these design decisions that I've had to make over the last 2 years, you'll see how helpful my home board has really been. So you'll see here that I have my home board above all of my other rooms. And here I have kind of just a bird's eye view of what my home looks like. I've really not included every single photo of everything in my house. I've tried to choose things that I think are specifically what I'm going for in the house. So you can see here in this home board, I've kind of broken up my house into different sections. So I've got hardware, wood tones, metals, window treatments, and colors. And this is the color palette that I'm really trying to work within. I think it's great if I can click on this tool here, find a color that's kind of somewhat within range, and then see how it matches up with the other colors. I also, of course, really love using their swatch tool because I could just go over here and pull out a bunch of different swatches, and it's going to pull the top main colors that it sees here. So I think this main home board has been really like the best investment of time that I've sat here and took pictures of everything in my house and dumped it in here, because now if I'm out shopping or if I'm on Facebook Marketplace, I can pull up the Milano app and double check measurements, make sure everything looks good without having to carry around like swatches or go searching through my iPhone camera roll. It's all just in one spot. And these pictures change constantly. I sometimes delete stuff, I sometimes add new things, but I really kind of wanted to just highlight here what I think is prominently interesting to me in the house at the moment. I've also got the details board here that kind of jumps into all of the different rooms that kind of expand on every single room and have more pictures in them if I just want to have something else to source from or want to revisit it. And what I I love even more about this is my influences that I constantly am changing. So this is where I'm dragging in my Pinterest photos, and I'm really trying to be selective about what I put in here because this is all stuff that I really want to be truly connected to. And that's what I think keeps me inspired and really helps me stay on track. And it's good to see all this in one spot because now I can kind of see what is it that I really like about all of this stuff. It kind of can stand out a little bit more to me, but I have kind of split up all of the different eras and colors and notes and things that I really want to incorporate into this house. So you'll see that I've got this like Spanish revival zone here, and I've kind of just given myself a list of words in each one of these genres like carved dark wood, terracotta tile, black iron, plaster, textured glass, white cream. So you can clearly see here that I do love iconic lamps and I love geometric shapes. I love things that feel a little bit more heavy and angular, and I think simple and modern. I think those are kind of the through lines. I do have some ornate influences like in the California Craftsman and Spanish Revival eras. I kind of love that I can point out here that something I really like about Japandi design is that there's a lot of use of like ambient light and lanterns. I also really love just like the earthy color palette and the use of plants. If you really want to highlight something, like maybe drawing around this part that you really like, and then you can add the arrow feature to just point to exactly what it is. And then you can add a note by just dragging the note here and saying, I really like this part of the photo. I don't like the whole photo. Or just kind of bring attention to something if you want to immediately have your eye drawn there. The other thing that I absolutely love about this that's made so easy is if let's say I go to Schoolhouse and I pull up this rug that I really wanted to get for the kitchen, but it just is not going to be practical, but maybe somewhere else in the house, I can just copy and paste it and drag it into this main area and then just see what it looks like with everything else. And so if I put this rug here, I can see that I've definitely got, the black accents, the terracotta and green. I think the cream color works. I think even this design on the rug is similar to the design that's on my dresser in my bedroom. So I really like that I can just do this so easily and be like, yeah, that would work for my home perfectly. Milanote is also such a great tool for collaborating with other people, like a roommate or a partner, just to see what their opinion is on what you've been working on. I know oftentimes I love something and my partner does not. And so Milanote has literally helped us kind of resolve that issue many times, just because I can say, look, it obviously would fit into this room. Let's split the cost and do it. So Milanote has always been so helpful for me to visualize these things, especially way before I commit to them. But if you're not sure of where to begin, then Milanote offers over 100 built-in templates for you to get started on any type of creative work. And the best part is Milanote is completely free with no time limit. So I definitely think you should sign up for a free Milanote account with the link in the description below. Mainly, this whole process just opens up tons more possibilities for shopping or styles to pull from, and ultimately more ways to create a place that feels like home. So this design decision is mainly about two things: deciding what should be stored away and what should live out in the open. And second, using functional items as decor intentionally so that they serve your overall vision. Most people would hide away their coffee mugs or stash things in cabinets, but I think there's actually an art to knowing what to leave out and how to do it. Sometimes the things you use every day can become the things that actually make your home feel well designed. For example, I love seeing all of my coffee paraphernalia and mugs out near the coffee bar area, but I collect mugs from different coffee shops that I love, and they really just remind me of good memories. Plus, I like the way they look because I think they fit into the chosen color palette. So when I'm looking for a mug at a coffee shop that I love to purchase, I don't go for like the bright pink one. I go for the one that I think will match my house. So I think it really adds a lot of personality and purpose, but it also can help make the space feel cohesive because of the style and materials that I'm choosing for these items. It's the same thing with my glassware. I really like to keep my interesting textured glass on the buffet in the dining room because they're a little bit more ornate and they're really pretty to look at, so they feel like decor pieces, but it also reminds me to use them. I think oftentimes some people purchase really beautiful things and then stash them away in like a china cabinet, and then you forget about it and never use it, but never let go of it because you think it's so special. So I would highly suggest, if you have some beautiful, interesting things, to put them out on display. I think there definitely has to be a balance between what you show and what you don't show. So for example, in the breakfast nook, I designed the bench to store away extra clutter that was sitting in the laundry area, and same same goes with the coffee bar. I added that in there to store away all of the appliances that I don't really use every day so that my counters could be clutter-free in the kitchen. Even if the things I had weren't ugly, they were just taking up valuable space. In the bathroom, I really like to leave out a few everyday items, but I try to do it in a way that feels a little bit more styled. Like I decant my mouthwash into this really pretty crystal bottle, and I just try to leave out the nicest versions of the items that I use on a daily basis. It's still extremely functional, but it does look really nice. But I think the opposite is true in my bedroom. That space is really meant to feel calm and relaxing. And even though I love my perfume, all those tiny bottles can really feel like clutter if they're just always sitting out. So I found this box on Facebook Marketplace and decided to turn it into my perfume case so that I can still access them really easily and look at them in a really aesthetically pleasing way. But now everything's closed up and it doesn't feel super messy anymore. So if something is functional and beautiful, like in the coffee bar, I wake up in the morning and all that stuff is functional and it kind of gets me excited to make a cup of coffee, then I would say leave it out. But if it's something like your bedroom where you want to relax and don't need all that clutter, then I would just put that stuff away, and you can find aesthetically pleasing ways to do so. Every room needs a focal point. In some rooms, like this room I'm sitting in right now, the living room, it was kind of obvious with the fireplace. But I think by painting it that deep red color, it became much more of a statement and really kind of helped distract the eye from the TV. I also think the guest bathroom is another example of how to use color to create a focal point and also distract the eye, because the blue tiles and painted ceiling really became the feature in there. And I think that's really what helped distract from how tiny that bathroom is. But sometimes you have a focal point that you just want to avoid. So in that case, I think it's really great to try to find a way to hide it and distract from it. For example, in my kitchen, the laundry machine at the end of the galley was visually unavoidable. So instead of letting that take all the focus, I added some contrast with some green tiles as a backsplash, and then repeated that color in a big piece of art to the right of it, and then added a curtain to cover up the majority of it. I know that a lot of people seem to have an opinion about the 3/4 length of the curtain and that it didn't really cover up the laundry machine, but that's how most Norin curtains are, and I really wanted to have a curtain that looked authentic and also brought in that Japanese influence into the house. I think it hides it enough without being annoying and cumbersome, especially if you're walking through it 20 times a day, maybe with messy hands. And honestly, whatever's still visible down below could now easily be just about anything, like maybe a refrigerator, which is totally okay, and that was kind of the entire point. On the other hand, though, the primary bedroom didn't have any standout architectural features to highlight or ignore. Just 2 windows, a closet, and a ceiling fan. But the window opposite of the door is the first thing you see when you walk down that hallway and into the bedroom. So I decided that I was going to make that wall and window my focal point. So I installed wall-to-wall track curtains to frame it and really fill the space with some drama and texture, and now it's clearly the focus of the room. I had a similar experience in the dining room because the first thing you see is a big blank white wall, and it just takes up a lot of visual real estate. So I thought the most affordable and renter-friendly thing I could do is turn it into a really big gallery wall, which I think brought in the necessary color and character and texture that the room really needed with all the dark wood and furniture and white walls. And in the primary bathroom, I decided to keep everything quite neutral and let the pink tile really shine, because now it feels more like a preserved historical detail instead of something that's just dated. But truly, I do think some of my most interesting focal points in the house have been actually created with lighting. I've used picture lights, track lighting, sconces, under cabinet lights, and bookcase lights. These all really allowed me to highlight what I wanted you to notice, and also just added some ambient glow at the same time, so I didn't have to always use a ceiling light, especially since some of the rooms in the house don't even have ceiling lighting, like this living room here. So as I've mentioned before, whether you're working with a space that has tons of character and history or just a blank space, the idea is still the same. Pick something to emphasize and then just work with it. Use color, contrast, scale, lighting, or even just styling to make that moment an anchor in the room. Okay, now the most ultimate design decision that I have made that really has impacted my home to date has been incorporating more of me. I made it a priority to include things that represent me, or things that I've created, or things that I'm interested in. I think when you look at homes that are really clean and chic and prop styled, and maybe they're in an open house or on AD or even in a showroom, sometimes what's really missing is who lives here. Like, whose house is this? You can tell they like French country vibes or modernism, but what do they care about? What are are their daily routines? What kind of lifestyle do they have? Those are the things that I actually find most interesting in people's decor. I love to see a piece of them and how they've styled their life. And you can always tell when something has been curated personally or it's just been, placed by some stylist. For me, a lot of that shows up through my furniture choices and placement, as well as art and collections. So I chose to put a bench in my breakfast nook so that I could invite more people to sit in there while I'm cooking, especially during the holidays, considering that our dining and living area are completely separate from the kitchen, and now at least like 4 or 5 people could sit on that bench. I also hung a block print from a San Diego artist I met at an artist market, and I made a custom velvet mat for it, so now it feels really personal and tied to a memory. And of course, as I've mentioned, that same area is a little homage to my love for coffee, especially like my French press that I found on my road trip to Arizona. Some of that stuff just really means something to me. I also have an expandable dining table to host more people when needed, as I really love to host people for holidays or just for dinner parties in general. And I've also intentionally created a bunch of different seating areas in the backyard so I could have people over to enjoy that space and have barbecues and stuff like that. I also have surf-related art and books because I grew up surfing and spent so much time at the beach. I also really love earthy and beachy textures, so you'll see that in some of the colors and art and ceramics that I have in the house. I have a few cat art pieces that remind us of our cats. I filled my office with modern furniture pieces that really remind me of my grandma and her utilitarian design sensibility. So that kind of stuff just isn't decoration or just purchases for me. It's also emotion and context. It's really what makes my house feel mine and makes me proud to call this my home. And I've always really been drawn to like the cozy, dramatic Mediterranean vibes of the Santa Barbara hotels or homes. So I really try to bring that in some way into my indoor and outdoor spaces. Whether I really achieve that or not is truly just dependent on budget and the fact that I'm a renter, but that's always kind of the end goal and the main vision. So it's not just about aesthetics, it's about feeling and memory and context, and those are all what drive my decisions and choices. So design really is just a problem-solving exercise. Sometimes the easiest way to do it is to just let your personality be the common thread. I think my home is always going to be a work in progress as I change, as times change, as the season changes. Change is inevitable. So I'm still making changes to the living room here, and I really want to work on the hallway and then eventually my partner's office, and the backyard is a never-ending thing that changes literally hourly. So make sure you're subscribed and hit the notification bell if you want to be notified of when I'm making more progress here. In the meantime, I've been trying to get better about sharing some more in-between updates on Instagram with the same username @livingwithlk. Other than that, I will see you guys on the next one. Bye.